Well, Jalen's the best player, so just looking at what he does defensively, he picked up Luka full court. He got to the free throw line. He did everything, and that's what your best player does.
This is the first I'm hearing it, but I mean, I don't think he's lying. I think JB he's been aggressive in every single way. He's been getting to the paint, getting to the free throw line, also making plays for other people. And then he's guarding Luka. He's guarding the best player. I've been on teams where, just any team, where does your best player have such a heavy load on the offensive end and then a heavy, just as equal heavy load on the defensive end? That's hard to do. I feel like people kind of took that out of context, and I've been hearing that I prefer JB over JT, and that's not what that was. I like to praise my teammates. I like to praise my teammates when they're playing well, and I feel like that's what I did my best to do. I do not prefer one or the other. I prefer both. Both of them are superstars, and it's being shown out here on the biggest stage in the world.
All right, Vinnie Goodwill, Natalie Esquire here. So this has become a thing a little bit, and I was just trying to figure out earlier today when this became such a thing in the NBA and NBA circles, where not only do we have to recognize the best player, but saying one guy is the best and can really be a political statement. This has become a talking point that I think has picked up lately, and it's heavy. There's so much heaviness to it that Drew Holiday had to come back and clarify a fairly innocuous interview just to be clear that I have no preference. I am neutral in this. I love JB. I love JT. So let's start with Jason Kidd, Natalie. I know what Jason Kidd was trying to do. He was trying to resurrect something there about the best player and on and on. What did you think about the entire unfolding of events there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jason Kidd knew what he was doing, right? It's a little gamesmanship on his part, right? Maybe cause a little something. But to me, you tell me who you think the best player is by your coverages. And so I think, in my opinion, I still think Jayson Tatum is the Celtics' best player. I'm happy to see Jaylen Brown getting recognition that I feel is long overdue for him, and people just acknowledging how good of a player he is. We've gone from the Jays can't work together, they need to be separated, to this. He was, in his opinion and in mine, snubbed, right, for an all-NBA team. And so I think this is good, but I think it's now going a little too far, and I rarely ever agree with Gil, but on his podcast, he was talking about this because, and I think I have a unique sensitivity to this as a Steph Curry fan, but it's we're looking at who's putting up all the stats and not looking at how the main player is being guarded, how the best player is being guarded, what they're trying to do to stop that player, right? And so to me, like I say, with your coverages, you tell me who you think the best player is. The fact that Jaylen Brown can make them pay for how Jayson Tatum is guarded is great. That's what helps to make this team get to another level. But I think this discourse has gone a little bit extreme, and I think the Western Conference Finals MVP didn't do much to help it, because I think it's been a thing. It's always been there in the background, but I feel like it really picked up steam there. And I think Jayson Tatum also should have won that. It was a very close vote. It was a 1 vote difference between the media. In my opinion, when I looked at that, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, I don't know who the voters were, or I don't remember them rather, but some media members I think really care about moments, especially in the postseason. And I thought Jaylen Brown had the better quote unquote moments, but I still think Jayson Tatum was the best player on the floor in that series. But I think that really helped to add steam to this discussion.
I don't think that, how do I put this? I don't think that Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown, it has to be about who's the better player. I think we can say that Jayson Tatum is the better player. Jaylen Brown is playing better. Those two things can be true. You can be the best player and not playing to your apex. as far as how efficient you're playing,
For sure.
what you're doing on defense, all that. Jaylen Brown right now has been playing as complete of a brand of basketball. Like, I know he had some turnovers last night, but the focus that he's played with, the responsibility of, like Drew Holiday said, of having to defend a guy like Luka Doncic and harassing him up the floor, like that takes a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
And as far as picking somebody up full court, that's 98 feet and all this other type of stuff. I think if you have like a playground sort of set up, and you got players on both teams, and I'm the captain, and I'm going to pick my team, I'm going to pick Luka Doncic first, and then I'm probably going to pick Jayson Tatum. But if you're asking me who's playing better basketball, who's in a better rhythm, who's in a better groove, who might be more critical with his performance to the way his team is winning right now, I would say that's Jaylen Brown. And I don't think that is something that is a divisive statement. Like, I come from a school of Detroit Pistons bad boys where Joe Dumars won NBA Finals MVP in 1989, even though Isaiah Thomas was the best player. And I don't think there's any fault or shame in, oh man, this guy has raised his level and emerged at this stage, even though he's not the leader of the team, even though he's not the quote unquote number one guy, but he's elevated his game in such a way that warrants or merits reward and warrants those conversations. I think it's more or less about the emergence of Jaylen Brown than it is even about Jayson Tatum underperforming, even though Jayson Tatum from a shooting standpoint has been underperforming.
For sure.
All right, yeah, let me ask you this, because Natalie, I want to come to you first on this, because
Okay.
I'm wondering, are we to blame as, let's say, fans, media? Are we to blame, or are we basically reflecting and kind of regurgitating, for lack of a better word, what matters to the players? So you mentioned Joe Dumars winning for the Pistons when he wasn't the best player. Natalie, as a Warriors fan, Andre Iguodala, not the best player on the Warriors, but a Finals MVP. And even in Celtics history, like there's a current broadcaster now, Cedric Maxwell, Finals MVP, but he was not the best player on the team with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale.
James Worthy Magic. It's happened.
Yeah, same thing. Like, are we making too big of a deal out of it, adding the extra layer, or is this something that matters inside locker rooms and families? They talk about it. Is it affect endorsements and contracts? And is it more important to players or more important to fans and media?
I think it does matter to players. And again, I think I have a very different perspective on this, because over my life when I grew up watching basketball, Finals MVP didn't mean as much as we've in the last several years made it to be. That wasn't a legacy award. It just wasn't. It was MVP. MVP, like I see Vinnie making a face at me. But
Finals MVP means a lot. It's always meant a lot.
That's fine, but I don't think it was a legacy award, and I'm not the only person who has that position. So that's my position. But it didn't have, when you don't hear any of the guys who have it being like, I have this many Finals MVPs. It's about their rings. It's about their championships. And that's just what it's always been. So I'm not saying that the award didn't matter. I'm just saying it was always the MVP. The full season award. That was the legacy award. That was the one that had the prestige to it, like the real prestige. And that has changed. I'm not going to get into why I think it's changed, but it's changed. And I think...
Well, why not? No, get into why do you think it's changed? I want to hear it.
I mean, I do think you could say it goes to Kobe. I think it more goes to Steph, right? Because with Kobe, I felt it was always he can't win without Shaq. There wasn't a harping, at least not from my recollection, on Finals MVP. But then when Steph didn't win it with Andre Iguodala, it became this thing, Finals MVP, Finals MVP, Finals MVP. And it was just for one, Andre Iguodala should have never won, but it's this thing that I'm saying with, you had Kawhi Leonard win a Finals MVP, and I feel like there's always some revisionism with him because we could say whatever we want, but that was still, Tim Duncan was still the best player on that team, no matter how well Kawhi Leonard did in a few games, right? Magic won his first Finals MVP because Kareem missed a game and he played great, but if Kareem would have played over that series, it was gonna be Kareem's. So Finals MVPs are a very unique thing in terms of how people get it. it's about matchups. Maybe a player shows up really big in a game. It just doesn't reflect a lot of things, and a lot of context is needed for it. And so, now in these last several years, I do feel like there's been just much more emphasis on it. And with the new addition of awards like this Western Conference Finals MVP, right? Like, at least from what I could see, it started a debate. It was like, oh, Jayson, Jaylen. So I do think it means something to these players because we talk about it. And like, I agree with Vinnie when he says it shouldn't be a big deal, but it is, because we use these awards in legacy conversations. When we talk about players, we use these awards. Yeah. And so that's why this is why I always harp on, like, we have to pick people for the right awards at the time, because history doesn't go back. The conversation we were having last week, everyone doesn't get into all this context. As years pass, they just say, this person had this many awards, they did this, they just did that. And all that context gets lost. And like, I would say, yes, I do agree that right now Jaylen Brown is playing better basketball. I don't think that I don't think he was the best player in the last series. I think Jayson Tatum was. I think he played better basketball. So over these first two games, yes, I do think Jaylen Brown is playing better basketball than Jayson Tatum, but I do think it's still important to recognize Jayson Tatum as the team's best player.
I'm not sure, Michael, and I talked about this yesterday with a friend of mine. When people say the media, I don't always feel like they're talking about us. I feel like they're talking about a certain very small sect, a very small influential block of media, or they're talking about just what they hear on social media and they don't know how to, separate the two. Whenever I've had conversations or talking about it on my podcast or here or wherever, it's never been about Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown. The conversation around those two have been, can you have two wings like that and win? And if they're not winning, then what do you do with one or the other? That's not about splitting one up or trying to divide. It's saying, hey, is this situation working with the current context of this team where they had different point guards, they had different coaches, they had different team setups? This is the year where it looked like it's coming together. But yeah, it's still a lot on the line, especially when you consider both guys will be $300 million players, and to allocate that much money to a salary cap in a salary cap league with all the constrictions that are going to be grandfathered in over the next couple of years, I think there is conversations that go on with that, not necessarily divisive, but hey, is this the best usage of our resources? Now to the finals MVP thing, maybe I'm tripping on that, but I definitely thought, now Michael, me and you are more at the same sort of ilk on certain things as far as how back we go in the crates with this stuff. I never looked at finals MVP as a demerit if someone didn't get it. You know what I mean? I never looked at it like, you know what I mean? I never looked at, Magic didn't get it in '88 because Worthy had a triple-double in Game 7, as that wasn't Magic's series. You know what I mean? Magic won finals MVP in '82 with Kareem there. I never looked at Larry Bird not getting it in '81 as a black mark on his record. I don't even look at Steph not getting it in 2015 as a black mark. I agree that he, if you want to say he should have won, cool. I understand the significance of Iguodala, the lineup change, and how that grandfathered an entire brand of basketball, basically with that one move of creating what we know now as the death lineup. It just became something so much greater because of these legacy history conversations, whether it's Kobe or Steph or Michael or LeBron. Like, is that something that we've always talked about as a demerit, or did we say, hey, this dude played and owned the series and it's worth that? Because I do think Kawhi Leonard in 2014, even though Tim Duncan was everything it revolved around, Kawhi Leonard owned that series with what he did on both ends of the floor.
He owned the last few games, and that's what I'm saying. He didn't own the series. Like, he literally had to step up over the last few games, and that's why he won it, and that's fine. I'm not saying he shouldn't have. He didn't own the series. He didn't own the series.
But just as you're giving Jayson Tatum credit for doing things beyond scoring,
right,
that was the same thing that Kawhi Leonard was doing. All I'm saying.
All I'm saying is, but the way we can have this conversation with context and nuance, that doesn't happen as years go by. And I feel like we're honestly saying the same thing. When you say it wasn't a demerit, that's my point. We didn't care. When I say like we didn't care, like I wasn't like, ooh, Magic has this many finals MVPs. It was like Magic has this many rings. He's the GOAT PG, blah, 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 blah.
I don't think we still care now. I really don't think we care now.
I think finals MVP is discussed a lot more and given much more weight now than it is in the past. And that's all I'm saying.
No, I think it's important, but I think what you're saying, I'm saying it's a booster, not a demerit if you don't.
It was a demerit for Steph. It definitely was.
Yeah, it was.
It was used as a demerit for him. It was.
I'm not saying it was or wasn't a demerit for Steph.
But it shouldn't have been.
I think the biggest demerit for Steph was 2016, even though he was hurt and everything else, like he didn't perform up to his standards. I felt like he performed just fine in the 2015 finals.
But we can't use common sense and contextualize that. So that doesn't matter.
I said he was hurt.
I heard you, but that's not how people talked about him. And that's the point.
Yeah.
We don't apply context to these situations. And it was used as a demerit against him. I feel much more than it ever was about Kobe. That's why I said I feel like it started with Steph. But I do feel like it's continued on.
You know what it started with?
Emphasizing it.
But it started to change. I think the whole tone of the conversation changed 10 years ago. Probably 10 years ago with the Spurs beating Miami. That great Spurs team, by the way. One of my favorite teams to watch. I think that was a year they played like 10 guys and nobody averaged over 30 minutes a game. Like they just like a really deep team. Fun team to watch, but it's the combination of, hey, surprise, surprise, Natalie and Vince. I think the conversation changed with LeBron and Steph. So LeBron started it. If you really want to trace, like, where does this start? It's Kawhi getting it because this is the statement, he shut down LeBron.
Right.
You go back and look at the numbers. He did not shut down LeBron.
Exactly.
He didn't.
He slowed him down. He took the numbers down. LeBron didn't average 35. He averaged 27 or 28.
Right.
He didn't shoot 60%. He shot 55%. So it was almost like we had this expectation of what LeBron was going to do. LeBron came in lower than the expectation. You were the guy who guarded LeBron a lot. We're going to give it to you. So
it was hard, and it was really hard to single out one guy in that series. You know what I mean? Like in 2004, the Chauncey Billups MVP could have went to Richard Hamilton. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things that you might close your eyes and like that Sandra Bullock gif, you close your eyes, you're looking around and you pick a number, you pick a name. You know what I mean? Like that, one of those type of things. And I do agree that LeBron and Steph, and because there's so much conversation about them that has nothing to do with them. And because a lot of people were trying to make LeBron the finals MVP in 2015. There was a few votes for LeBron in 2015 in a series where he shot 39%.
Exactly.
You got to make that make sense to me. You know what I mean? Like I get it. And Steph
they made that award about Andre. They made that award about Andre for Bron. It wasn't even about Andre. It was like to say, he was so good guarding LeBron. That's what it was about. Like, what are we doing? Steph was averaging like 26 points.
I don't mind defense being rewarded. I don't mind.
I'm sorry.
If defense is half the game.
It was a moronic vote.
I'm saying in general.
I'm sorry.
I'm saying I'm not.
It was a moronic vote.
Sorry. I didn't. Once again.
I hate that.
Once again, so I can be clear, because I don't have an allegiance to Steph or against them or anything else. I'm saying from the standpoint of Michael Holley, you know where I'm going with this. Defense is half the game. I hate that the way that the league has gone now, and they're trying to shift it back a little bit, is that defense counted for maybe 25% of the game. If we're saying the game is being played on both ends, and that is something that is going to be acknowledged, if that's the premise of it, if that's part of the premise, part of the calculus, I can understand the calculus even if I don't agree with it.
But that wasn't real. It was about LeBron. It was like, how he defended Bron. They weren't rewarding defense. It was a way to reward Bron without giving Bron the MVP. And that's what I'm saying.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And I think it's also...
That's a lot to say.
But it's also... I will say this, though. It has been... The award has been weaponized in a way where Steph in 2022 kind of feels like, okay, I finally got it. Hey, what they gonna say now?
That meant something to him. That award meant something to him.
Dude,
it did.
You got four titles, but that's where the conversation became, because you didn't win in the Iguodala year and Kevin Durant won 2. Now you get your 4th. You feel like there's some kind of release because, hey, I finally got my Finals MVP.
It's
yeah,
a
you finally got your
validation.
Finals MVP. But dog, you got 4 titles, and a lot of people can't say that. Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.